Well, the Department for Education are introducing a revision to the statutory framework of the early years foundation stage, which comes live in September 2012. And as part of that, we now need to establish a child's starting point when they join the setting. And we also need to track their learning and development while they're with us. We also have the requirement now to write a 2-year progress report on a child's development and learning. So there's much more of a focus on tracking a child's development than there was in the previous version of the framework. We're going to change the way that we track to accommodate these new requirements. Previously, team, you'll remember at the back of the learning journeys, we have an A3 tracking sheet, and we're going to replace this now with a new tracking booklet, which is actually much easier to use, more user-friendly, and I also think something that the parents will understand more as well. There have been some practical changes. In the new framework, we've gone from 6 areas to 7. They've separated literacy out as an area in its own right. And we've got much less early learning goals now. There are now just 17 eventual outcomes which the children will be expected to have attained by the end of reception class, i.e. the first year at school. Well, as you know, in the previous tracking, there's the Development Matters document where there are development statements that we track children's progress against. Very much the same concept, but we've put that all into one user-friendly document now so that you don't need to cross-reference it, it's all there for you. Now, what we're trusting you to do is to confirm when a child is able to demonstrate in their day-to-day activities that they can use these skills and do these skills. And we're minimising paperwork as we always look to do at Kids Aloud. What I'm not going to ask you to do is confirm that you've observed something 3 or 4 times. I'm not going to ask you to do written observations that prove a child can do these things. I am just going to let you mark that aspect and that development matters as complete. And the evidence that we'll use is the child themselves. I'm just so passionate about not doing wasted paperwork. Let's keep the paperwork to a minimum. You guys want to be interacting with the children. You want to be doing your amazing activities with the children. And what we need to do is trust you not to tick these things off until they really, really are something that the child can demonstrate as knowing and understanding deeply. Yes, it's really interesting because the framework is there for the provider to interpret themselves. I was recently with Ofsted a couple of weeks ago at a roundtable event and I had 2 inspectors on the table. I was telling them what we were intending to do, and especially the fact that we were going to minimise paperwork by saying the child is the evidence rather than documenting what a child can do. You can see what a child can do. One Ofsted inspector absolutely loved it and thought it was fantastic, and the other Ofsted inspector said they quite liked it, but they didn't feel they could give outstanding if there wasn't documented evidence that a child could do something. So this is the real quandary with Ofsted, and at the end of the day, if you remember my earlier video blog, we've got to focus on what we believe is right, what we think is best for the children, and what we always think is best for the children is to minimise paperwork and spend more time with them doing great and fantastic activities. Nothing will change with the activities and planning that we do for the children. And if anything, I have a slight concern because we've clearly documented these development statements now. What I don't want is that the key people that are doing the planning for the children look and narrow down the activities to tick off one particular development statement. What we need to do, what we need to have confidence to do, is give the children a really rich learning environment, and out of that learning environment, they will naturally make the progress that they need against these development statements. So please team, nothing changes. We keep doing amazing, wide, broad activities for the children. And as I say, out of that will automatically come this wonderful learning anyway. I think my only concern with this new document is that it becomes a tick list. And even maybe a tick list that people get obsessed with trying to work through quickly. So team, all I would say is please, we do no justice to the child if we say they can do something that they can't. Neither do we do any justice to a child if we start doing really narrow, boring activities just so that we can tick off one of the development statements. So my nervousness is that we stop doing these rich, wonderful, purposeful activities activities where children are learning lots and lots of things anyway and start narrowing down too much to 1 or 2 development statements. Yeah, so for example, one of the development statements actually reads, uses one-handed tools and equipment, for example, children's scissors. Now, what I wouldn't want is for a colleague to say, right, let's sit down and use scissors and cut out shapes from a piece of paper. That's a really boring interpretation of how a child can learn that skill. Much better that we have a really rich environment where there's lots of arts and crafts and opportunities to cut and stick and glue, maybe group time activities where they're creating a new landscape to use the small world activities on. This is what I mean about don't focus on can a child use scissors, focus on a fantastic activity that will naturally introduce the concept of using scissors and sticking and gluing, and therefore when you come to reflect on whether a child can do that development statement, they've done it through their day-to-day activities in the room. My final message to the team is let's not get obsessed with tracking. What we're trying to do is give children an all-round experience at Kids Aloud, and this really helps us monitor whether we're doing that effectively by our day-to-day practice. We'll very quickly start to establish things that children are gifted and talented in so that we can support and develop that. We may notice areas where children need some additional support, and what we can do through fun activities is introduce these concepts in a wide, broad context rather than in a narrow development statement. So my final message to the team is let's have fun with this, let's celebrate children's achievements, let's not get obsessed with tracking children, and let's share these successes with parents so that we can all together ensure that children are having a really all-round fantastic learning experience at Kids Aloud.